Welcome back to the Constructing Profits podcast, a show where we help contractors build more than projects. We help you build profitable, scalable businesses. Today's episode is about something that a lot of contractors overlook, and that's words. Not tools, not trucks, not software, words. Because here's the truth. You could be the best contractor in your market, but if your website sounds like every other contractor out there, you're basically invisible. And in today's world, your website, your proposals, your email, social media, those are your first impressions. If your words don't connect emotionally, they don't build trust, you're actually losing jobs before you even know about them and before you even get the phone call. So today I'm joined by Andrea Danelak, a professional copywriter with a background in journalism communication, and she specializes in helping businesses clarify their voice, sharpen their message, and tell stories that actually convert. In this episode, we break down why most contractor websites are too focused on not me, but again, on the company rather than the actual client. All right. How to build emotional connection through storytelling, what pages every contractor website must have, how to identify your ideal client persona, and the real truth about AI and copywriting. If you want your marketing to work harder for you without just spending more on ads, this episode is essential. Let's dive right in. Hey, Andrea, welcome to the Constructing Profits podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, I'm really looking forward to our discussion, Andrea. Now, we've had a recent podcast with Rihanna. We talked about different worlds colliding and the small business community within Winnipeg, and that was how we had first met, actually through a joint client. And you do excellent work, and Rihanna speaks incredibly highly about you as well. And just as we've gotten to know each other more and seen each other's work, I thought this would be a really good topic to discuss. So, Andrea, as we've talked about before, really we're going to be talking about from a builder or home service, home renovation type perspective. Where does copywriting and storytelling come in, and why is it valuable? What are some things that they can keep in mind when they're doing work themselves? When do they need a pro? How do they work with a pro? That is generally what we're going to be talking about in the next few minutes here. But just as we dive in, though, Andrea, how about could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do, and why you're here?
Absolutely. So my background's actually in journalism. I went to college for it and also earned a communications degree. And I worked as a magazine editor before switching to the other side of the coin, to public relations and communications. While I was working in that, I started freelancing on the side, mainly for magazines and the trades. And then about 3.5 years ago, I thought to myself, I think I can make a go of this full time. So I quit my corporate communications job and opened my own writing business and haven't looked back. And I quickly discovered that I love copywriting, especially for small local businesses. So it's a little bit different than traditional journalism, but still closely related. And that's really where my passion is now.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks a lot for sharing. On your website, and it's very vibrant. It can immediately, without even speaking to you, there's a lot of energy you can feel from it. But you have a headline of "Meet Your Writing Unicorn." What does that mean? What's the story behind that?
I think because I've got so much experience in different aspects of writing and journalism and communications, I've kind of done a little bit of everything over the years, and I have been praised by lots of clients for my ability to pick up concepts and industries really quickly and write to different audiences very quickly. So I think that the writing unicorn is sort of a play on the fact that I can do writing of all kinds, like whether it's a magazine article to a report to social media captions. It's just something that comes naturally to me, and I like writing across different platforms.
Okay. Well, that's great. And I want to ask you this. What, in your opinion, is there a difference between, say, an author and a writer? And if so, what would be the difference there?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say an author is more focused on books. And I'd say a writer is a little bit more, I'll say, of a generalist term. Because I could be a report writer and focus on annual reports, or I could be a magazine writer writing for magazines, or I could be writing, technical writing. So I think it's a little bit broader, whereas I kind of tend to go immediately books when I think of author.
I see. Okay. Yeah, no, that's a good. Thanks for sharing. And part of why I was asking that is, I've looked at, I've worked in marketing for a long time, and even needing to hire people or work with subcontractors, and generally what I found is, an author versus a writer. An author, it's like their story, their vision, and they have less concern maybe from a client's perspective, right? Where a writer is, they have a job and they need to get it done, right? It same sort of thing like a designer versus an artist, right? An artist,
Right.
they're doing artwork, which is just, again, it's their passion, their vision, where a designer, like they have a job to do, right? And they just need to get it done. So I just wanted to ask that, because that somewhat ties into, working with clients and being able to, see what the client's vision is, but also then bring your expertise to it and have something that you're happy with and they're happy with, and ultimately it works, right? So Andrea, we were talking about working with companies that are in the trades and, home renovation companies, home services, those types of businesses. If I were running a company like that, why should I care about the words that I'm using in copywriting? Can't I just have a basic website and stick some words on there and then check off the box that I have a website and I'm done? Why should I take this seriously? Like, what do I need to know, to look at this effectively?
Well, I think that the words that you choose matter because it helps build that emotional connection with your audience, which is what you really want, to help them connect with your brand, connect with what you offer. And you really have limited time to grab someone's attention. So having, quality words and quality visuals to complement them, is a great way to position your brand and show the client exactly who you are and how you can help solve their problems.
For sure. Yeah. And, I know we spoke before the podcast as well, just about, what those words should be focused on. Right. And it sounds like you see a lot of this as well, where companies, maybe they've put thought into their wording and the visuals that they have on their website, but it's all about them and how awesome they are. Right. So what are your thoughts there? If I have, again, this company and it's my website, should I be talking about why they should choose us for their home renovation, or should I be focusing more on the homeowner and their needs? What are your thoughts there in terms of the story we're telling and how we're speaking to prospects?
I think that's one of the biggest issues that I see with a lot of websites. And again, this goes beyond this industry, but focusing more on what you think that you should be saying versus what the client actually wants to say or wants to hear. And I think that knowing your audience is a huge piece of that. You want to know what kind of language is going to resonate with them. But you also it really boils down to your writing for your audience. Like you shouldn't be writing for yourself or for your senior leadership team. It should be the person who you want to be targeting to purchase your product or book a service with you. And I think that's something that is an easy fix, but lots of people just don't think about it.
You mentioned with the senior leadership team, and that's one thing I've come across. Like, the larger the company, often the harder it is, because then you have all of these different stakeholders are like, well, I want you to add this in there, add this in there. Oh, well, we have to say we're, a great employer, all these things, and we have all these safety things and awards. It can be difficult. And you're like, well, no. Like, none of that matters. Our homeowner that wants to hire us, that's what they care. They don't care about these things. You agree with that?
I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. I've been in
Yeah.
that position where the end result, once everyone has had a say in what they think should be in there, it is just a little bit of a mess, to be honest. I think people need to narrow their focus again, coming back to what their audience will want to hear.
Yeah. So how do you do that? Again, if I'm hiring you to help me with that, how do you find out what my prospective, clients and prospects want to hear and what they care about?
So there are a couple of ways that I look at how I can use language to resonate with an ideal client. One is by gathering demographics, and that's going beyond just age and location, looking really into their online consumption habits. How do
Mm.
they consume information? Where do they spend their time online? From there, you can create buyer personas. I'm sure you know this
Yeah.
already,
Yeah.
but it does help. It's a helpful exercise to help folks really narrow down who their audience is. You can also pay attention to the audience once you know who they are, and mirror their style. See what kinds of language they use online. And you can also review, never copy competitor messaging to see what
Mm.
others in the space are saying. And one other thing that I would add is that copy shouldn't be a one and done task. Like all too often, I see people, oh, we finished our web copy, check that off the list, and then they never touch it again. But copy should, be tested and refined over time. The industry changes, language changes, and that all should be taken into consideration. And people should revisit their audience and their copy to make sure that the copy is still resonating with them.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Really good point. You had mentioned the term persona, and that's quite a popular term. Of course, I know what that is, and generally we don't get into too many highfalutin marketing terms. But for people that may not know what that is, how would you describe what a persona is and how it impacts the writing that would be on our website?
So when you determine all of the demographics and information about your target audience, a persona is sort of a representation of that person. So when you're trying to speak to an audience, you can pretend that you're speaking directly to that person. Often they have names, so you could have, Harry homeowner
Yeah. Yeah.
is could be a persona, and it can be a helpful exercise because when you're doing things like writing or other marketing activities, it all boils down to, does this resonate with Harry homeowner? And I think that simple question can help a lot of folks stay on track when it comes to whether something is going to resonate with their target audience.
Yeah. No, it is very important. Yeah. And it makes it so, well, I can't speak for you on this, but I would assume just from my own experience, but it makes it much easier to write something, or even if we're writing an ad or creating a video, when you know exactly who you're speaking to, right? So you mentioned Harry homeowner, but when we know that, Harry is, 46 years old, they have, a spouse, they have 3 kids, they're both like the 2 adults are professionals, and maybe they're embarrassed to have their friends come over, during the holidays, or they're doing well in their careers, but they feel their house doesn't reflect their perceived status in the world, right? So any of those, like those last 2 examples would be very different motives for why they would spend a lot of money to renovate their home. But when we know that, then now we can speak, to Harry and talk about how, his home could better reflect, his stage in life, or, not be embarrassed when people are coming over, right? Rather than picking a bunch of random things that people may be looking for, right? To share.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people think, demographics, and they just think, oh, I just need to know how old they are and, if they're physically located near me. But like you said, having an idea of their pain points and any challenges that they might be facing are huge when you're creating that persona, and when you're writing the copy, because you want to be able to speak to those pain points and show how you're going to help solve them.
Yeah. Now, I know just in our past discussions, this is a big focus for you, but I just wanted to take a few moments to talk about storytelling. So, how does storytelling play into this, right? We now know who we're speaking to, what things that they care about. Where does that come into the picture, and how do you find out what those great stories are to be able to share?
So there are a few things I wanted to talk about with storytelling, and I think a big thing is that through storytelling, you can tell people more than just what you do. You want them to feel something about why you do it and like why they should care. So I think one of the big things with storytelling specifically is you should shift the focus from what you offer as a company or as a service to how the person will benefit. And when you make that mindset shift, it's, in my experience, the copywriting falls into place a lot better. You also want to make everything feel personal and show the people, the experiences, the values behind your brand. If you're working in someone's space, like a home or a business, or potentially in one of their largest investments, your client should feel like you should care, and it should feel authentic and human, and storytelling can assist with all of that. And again, knowing what kind of language resonates with your ideal client can help tie into that storytelling as well to make your writing even more impactful and engaging.
And that I would assume would help a lot on the trust factor with prospects, right? And knowing that they've chosen the right partner, for their project, whatever that may be.
Absolutely, especially for industries like this, where again, you're working in someone's most personal spaces. You want that sense of trust. You want that credibility. You want to come across as professional and establish yourself as an authority in your given industry.
Yeah, we did a survey for one of our clients recently, and we call it a motivational survey, not to see how motivated the clients are, but what were their motives behind their action, right? Like, how long had they been thinking about this renovation? How long until they reached out, to a contractor? How many contractors did they, speak with? What were the things that they really cared about? Why did they choose the one company? If they chose a competitor, why would they have done so? And one of the open-ended questions I really like is, we ask, if you were to describe our company in a few sentences, what would you say about us? But now we're able to hear right from them how they perceive, our company, right? But one of the responses I read, just, the survey is going on right now, but a client had commented to our client that they had the feeling that their project was worth the company's time and they took it serious. So I thought that was really insightful, just showing, how important that the trust is in making that decision. So anyways, it was something I wanted to share, but I thought that was really, really insightful.
Well, that's great information to have too, just as as a marketer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And then, they are telling us exactly what they care about. Right. And it's interesting because sometimes, maybe you could speak to this, but it could even be a quote from a client, and that could be our headline. Like, it says everything that we would want. Right. So sometimes, the words come easy in those cases. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, they're evidence of your brand values and promises in action. Hearing right from the clients just echoes your messaging and why you're awesome.
So, Andrea, now that we're speaking about how important storytelling is, how do you find the story, or how do you find something that's interesting? And, do you need to do any coaching with your clients so they're able to identify those stories when they happen? Because sometimes something cool may happen and it's just a day in the life and they don't realize that, hey, that there's something to this.
For some clients, it comes very naturally that they'll tell me, oh, we've had customers say this or this or this about how, we've helped with a certain problem. And then some do require a little bit more coaching, where I'll ask them questions. And I think that's where my journalism background comes into into play, where I have to coax it out of them a little bit more. But once we get into the nitty-gritty of, how they help their clients, there are often little nuggets of information that are just gold in terms of turning that information into words that will resonate with other potential clients.
All right. Well, very cool. Yeah. And I've tried to share. Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. I've tried to share with our clients just to be on the lookout for those opportunities, right? Because, I've joked with them, and I'm sure for your business, there's a mix of you doing the writing and then the client doing the writing, and maybe you're editing it. And that would actually be a good topic to discuss here as well. But one of the things I've said is, if I say, hey, Andrea, we need you to write 500 words by the end of the day, that can be a little daunting for someone when they're not a trained writer, right? Unless, they're used to being on site. However, if someone just sees a cool story and then they're able to write it up, that's a lot easier because they're inspired and they have something specific to talk about. So, we often coach our clients in those cases, like, hey, when someone says something, or like, those are the things you're looking for. So you're not forced to write content or create videos, but be on the lookout for these types of cool stories.
Definitely. And it could be something as easy as I keep a note on my phone that I can jot ideas into, or if I hear a cool story, that way it's easy for me to just jot it down and I can expand on it later, but at least I have it before before I forget about it.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So we've talked a good amount about websites so far, and I'm sure that'll be on the top of the list here, but let's say for all of our contractor businesses out there, what is the key content that they should have when it comes to copywriting and their digital assets? What do you recommend? Where should someone get started?
I think starting I mean, most people, when they're searching up for a company, they're going to land on either your website or your social media. So I think starting with the website, there are a few components that you should prioritize. One is obviously the about page. And, we were chatting about trust and credibility. And I think that's where you can really have the opportunity to connect with potential clients. They can see the people behind the company and your values and your, priorities. So having that about page, having the services page that sells your service or product and the process of working with you. A section on case studies, project spotlights, incorporating testimonials into that too. That's a great opportunity for storytelling. And I'd also have either, a contact page or a spot where that information is very visible, like in the website footer. You want to make it easy for folks to reach out to you. And finally, probably most importantly, is having that homepage, having a solid headline that captures somebody's attention. Again, you have a couple seconds, that's it. And having that hook there that makes them want to learn more and dive deeper into your website. So I think starting with the website and then sort of building out to other elements, like having your social media. I know this conversation isn't about social media per se, but there are lots of opportunities for positioning your brand, even just at first glance, like things like how your Instagram bio. When you have a solid understanding of your brand voice and brand personality, that information can all appear on all touch points that your customer may interact with you on. And you want that consistent experience for your clients, no matter how they're interacting with you. And you want your brand to be instantly recognizable. You want folks to remember you and even to recommend you to others. So this all comes back to strengthening that trust and credibility through, solid copywriting, whether it's on your website, social media, in a blog post, any channel. Sorry, I went a little bit off topic.
No,
there,
that's fine. No,
but
that's
it all
good.
kind of ties together.
Yeah, no, you're right, and you had a really good point there that when someone is working with you to be able to create what their story is, they have a good vision of who they're speaking to, what these people actually care about. They're speaking a language that their prospects, it'll resonate with them rather than talking about how awesome we are. When you're going through all of that process, that can then be sliced and diced and used in all those other channels. Even the sales process, right? And emails with people.
Absolutely.
Again, we're able to use that. So that's why, it's really an important investment in the beginning for someone to be able to find out what their voice is. Who are they? What is their reason for being? Who do they serve? What do those people care about? And how do we speak about ourselves? That really can impact everything that we do with clients, right? Even the operations, of building the project, those same themes, still apply there.
Absolutely. And I've even seen cases where, information that's been discussed or looked into as part of that voice building process applies to, internal communications within a company too. So it goes beyond just speaking to your customers, but sometimes it can find its way into sort of unexpected places too within the company.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you'd mentioned some of the key areas that a business owner should focus on for their content. And one I wanted to highlight was you mentioned the process page. And I don't know that every business process is important, but definitely when you have, a custom home builder or a custom home renovation company, that process is so important, right? Ultimately everyone's sort of using the same types of materials. They have the same type of, workers, right? But it's really that process and their communication. How do we share what is going on with the client? How do they feel comfortable? So that page, I've seen some data that the process page is, especially in this industry, becoming one of the most highly clicked on and reviewed pages. So it's a really good one to be able to add in that initial, core of pages on a brand new website.
Absolutely. It's pretty much a must at this point. Often I'll see companies want it both on their service pages, or they'll have it as a separate page, and then it's also included on their homepage too. They really want to make it clear how they want it clear so that customers can see exactly what it's like to work with you, and the expectations are all laid out right from the get-go.
Definitely. So on that point, how do you bridge this gap? Because a challenge that we have is the build process is, in a lot of cases, highly technical. There's lots of times to check in and so on. So how do we have the technical information and the detail, but have that work well with storytelling and, maybe using fewer words, than more words? Do you have any thoughts on how to sort of, bridge that gap and, again, get the detail, but also make it compelling and engaging for people reading?
Well, I know it's tough for a lot of people to write in plain language without especially when they're using lots of technical terms. In my opinion, that's one of the benefits of hiring a professional writer, so that they can help distill those ideas into something that does tell more of a story and will resonate with your client more than if you were just to outline in very technical terms what the process is. You can kind of take your readers on a little bit of a journey, so that they can imagine themselves within that process and how it might look in their lives. I think that is one of the key things to remember. Obviously, the balance of having that important key information, but also making it relatable for your audience.
Yeah, no, a very good point. And we've talked a little bit as well about one of the challenges of the me problem, where contractors are talking just about them and how cool they are. But do you also see a lot of more of like the Me Too type of websites and copy? And what I mean there is that you see a website for, say, a home builder, and you're like, any home builder could have this exact website. Like it says so much and it's so generic, it really says nothing. Like, do you come across that quite a bit?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think and this goes across all industries, if I see someone say customer satisfaction is our top priority,
Yeah.
or some variant of that, it drives me a little bit bonkers. I think that's why it's so important to have that idea of where your brand is positioned and your brand voice, is because, like, what's that secret sauce that is going to make people want to work with you as opposed to every other company that's offering similar services. And really understanding your voice and your audience will help that be more reflective of your brand and what you can offer folks.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks a lot for sharing it. So it's clearly important, the words that we're using and the story that we're telling. And it's always been easy to come up with general and basic content. And it's much harder to be able to have more concise, compelling content, of course. So it's a bit of a good time for a segue into AI and how it's changed the landscape, and especially in the marketing area. Copywriting seemed like it was one of the first areas where AI really gained some momentum. So what is your experience of being a professional writer been with AI? Have you seen areas where it has helped, or have you found it overcomplicate certain things, or it's a godsend? What is your experience so far?
I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Okay. Yeah,
It's such a hot topic right
Yeah.
now.
Oh, yeah.
I think across all industries, and I'm constantly asked if I'm worried about it in terms of my work, and so far I'm not. So I will say that AI tools definitely have their merits, mainly when it comes to quickly coming up with ideas, like brainstorming. It can be very helpful. It can also help with things like structuring a piece of content, like a blog post. I use it for brainstorming once in a while. Like, there are some pros to it, but there are also, in my opinion, too many things working against it to be a complete replacement for a professional writer. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a writer, but because there are a lot of disadvantages to it as well. So one of my biggest cautions is relying on the information that it spits out. There can be blatantly false information, whereas an actual human writer would be fact checking. It also doesn't understand the nuances of your brand or industry like you or a subject matter expert within your company would. Um, Probably my main, caution with AI is that it goes against everything we've talked about so far about building an emotional connection with your audience. It also doesn't allow your brand to reflect really what makes it stand out. Like, you can give it prompts about your brand voice, but those only go so far with the information that it regurgitates. And I will say too, once you recognize the patterns of AI generated content, you won't be able to unsee them. Like I could spot AI content from a mile away. And I think non-writers are starting to as well. And the content just doesn't land like, like it would if an actual human was behind it. So while it definitely has advantages. I have a lot of clients who come to me with copy that they wrote with tools like ChatGPT, and they hate it because, surprise, surprise, it's not converting for them. It's lacking that that human angle to it. So in my opinion, it would just be easier to hire a writer from the get-go and maybe use AI tools to help with the brainstorming or the structural components, like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
One thing I've heard people say is, use AI for the grunt work and writers for the gold. And that really resonated with me because I think that's a good way of looking at it. Using an actual writer will help keep the storytelling human and relatable and engaging.
Yeah, no, that's a really some great insight there. And, because AI, just like anything, is a tool, right? And at least for now, people still need to know, you still need to know what good writing is and what good storytelling is and what clients care about in order to direct, AI to be able to come up with it or to, edit content or create more content. Yeah. If I'm a builder and I'm great at building, but I'm not great at writing, I don't have the skills to be able to make the tool do the things that someone like yourself would be able to do. Right. So, great insights. You mentioned that you can spot the content from a mile away. What are some telltale signs of AI content?
Oh, well, there's great debate in the writing world right now. One of them is the use of the M dash, so the long dash. And it's funny because people are saying, oh, it's indicative of AI writing, and it is a lot of the time.
It is.
But it's also, these tools are pulling from established writers' work when established writers use the M dash. So this is a great nerdy debate that's going on in my space right now. Another thing.
I was just going to say, I'm a fan of the M dash and use it a lot. And I was just joking with a friend who runs an agency, and he's had clients that are like, Greg, quit using AI, and I can tell because of the M dash. He's like, I actually wrote this, and it's not right. So there's that. Anyway, so yeah, that's a funny one. And then I think it's elevate, as another popular word. But what else do you see in terms of like telltale signs that you've got some AI copy?
The word elevate, terms like level up, often in introductory phrases, you'll hear like in today's world or in today's ever evolving landscape, digital landscape, things like that. That's another tell. There are so many now, and even just the patterns of how the text is laid out in paragraphs, I can spot it pretty easily now, and I think that other people are catching on. And
I see elevate used quite a bit, and it's funny because I see it in ad copy, I hear it on radio ads, I see it all over the time. So in the bit that we use ChatGPT, we've said like do not use the word elevate, and there's a bunch of other ones. But anything else that you see that you can tell that just something isn't quite right and they're missing the mark?
One of them is in introductions. I'll often see, in today's ever-evolving digital landscape or in today's fast-paced world, is almost always, not always, but almost always an indication that maybe something like ChatGPT helped out a bit.
Great insights there. So we can just move to start wrapping things up, Andrea. But and you do have this opportunity right now, but in speaking with a contractor, so again, home builder, home services type business, if you had one really important message for them that could shape how they look at copywriting and storytelling and how their digital assets should reflect that, does anything come to mind in terms of what your message would be to those folks?
I think one of the big things is don't tell your audience. So let people experience or imagine it. And by it, I mean working with you. Let them experience or imagine it for themselves. It makes it more engaging and, again, more human. It all comes down to that human angle. And I think if you keep that at the back of your mind when you're doing any kind of writing, it's going to be that much more impactful.
Right on. Great point there. Perfect. Well, if someone would like to learn more from you or reach out to you and potentially work with you, Andrea, where should we send people? We'll have some all your links and socials and the meeting notes, but where would you like people to go?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat and nerd out about words. You can visit my website at andreadanelak.com, or you can follow me on Instagram as well.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise today. We got into some really interesting topics here, and it's been really great working with you. I look forward to continued projects in the future. But yeah, you're doing a great job, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to share that with all of the homeowners and business owners that are listening to the podcast here today. So thanks a lot, Andrea.
Thank you so much for having me.
As a business owner, do you ever get the feeling that something is just off in your business? Sometimes it's hard to put your finger on it, but it's almost like we're just getting half of the story. Well, that's exactly what it's like to not have a strategic sales and marketing strategy in place. If you would like to have a team dive into your business, find all of the things that you're doing really well at, areas for improvement, what order of importance all of those action items should be in to be able to impact revenue and profit in your business, please go to constructingprofits.com and book a strategic consult today. Finally, I'd just like to say thank you very much for listening to the Constructing Profits podcast. Assuming you found a lot of value today, and I really hope that you did, please share it with a fellow contractor who's looking to aggressively grow their business. We'd love to have a conversation with them. Now, in this episode, we shared actionable insights. We're not saying things just for shits and giggles. We want you to be able to get some nuggets and actually apply them to your business right now. So think about this past episode. What was the one thing that you could implement in your business today and go and do it? Okay? So let's build strong, let's build smart, and let's build a profitable business. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode.